and welcome to Coast Connections. I'm Elizabeth Heinz, and today we're going to talk about, is there a certain glow about you? Now, is that coming from too much screen time, or is that glow actually from spending some time in nature? We're going to talk about the great outdoors and how important it is in this online world. And specifically, we're going to talk about forest bathing, and bathtubs are optional. And to walk us through the forest, we have an amazing forest therapy guide here. Welcome to Haida Bolton. Hello,
Thank you,
Haida.
Elizabeth.
Very good to see you. You live over in Sechelt, and we appreciate you coming overseas to the island to be with us today.
And I appreciate you having me. I used to live in Parksville, and it's nice to be home on the Central Coast. Central Island.
Central Island, very good.
Yeah.
Now, Haida, let's talk a little bit about the science behind forest bathing and nature therapy. What are some of the health benefits that a person can get by spending time getting offline, going out into the woods, taking a walk? What actually happens to your body? What are some of the things that takes place?
There's three main things, and there's a whole host of benefits, but the three main health benefits are lowered blood pressure, a boosted immune system, which is an increase in natural killer cells, which is the white blood cells that help fight off cancer cells and other diseases. And it also decreases our stress hormones, which brings a lot of calm, helps combat anxiety and depression, and just gives us a really happier, more joyful inner peace.
Mm-hmm. You always feel that whenever you're outside and walking in nature, that there's this, that you're responding to elements that are coming towards you, you're interacting with the trees. What is it in the trees that actually, how do trees help to heal us or soothe us? What's going on?
Well, there's a number of hypotheses, and one that they're working on is that the trees and other plants give off an aroma, which they call phytoncides. And these phytoncides naturally help to protect the tree against diseases and keeps the trees healthy. And when we breathe them in, scientists believe that that is what is causing us to have a boosted immune system, because they have done studies before and after a forest bathing or forest therapy walk. And after 2 hours, the immune system can be boosted by up to 40%. And after 3 days in a row, it can be boosted up to 50% and remain at those elevated levels for up to 30 days.
Wow.
And I just heard evidence from a fellow forest therapy guide who's participant in her retreat, her 3-day retreat back in the spring, who had cancer, talked about how her immune system was boosted, her white blood cell count was boosted, and her doctor was just floored and couldn't believe this, and now wants to do more research in this as well.
Beautiful. And forest bathing is a very ancient Japanese art form, and there's a lot of research and a lot of science behind this. It's not just some sort of airy-fairy woo-woo thing. The Japanese have been in on this, and the Koreans for many, many centuries. And in those countries, even in present day, forest therapy or forest bathing is also included in their medical system. That's a modality that they actually prescribe to people. So that's sort of making its way over here to North America. And I might add that you are the first person in BC to be trained as a certified nature and forest therapy guide.
Correct.
And it's an international organization. You've got therapists in 6 different continents, 600 worldwide, and 3 in BC, of which you were the first. So congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And just to point out that we are not called therapists. Mm-hmm. It's the forest that is the therapist. The forest provides the medicine and the healing. We are guides that sort of open the door and offer people to interact with the forest in very healing, mindful ways.
I like that distinction. Thanks for clarifying that. That's quite a difference.
Yeah.
So, Haida, what would be the difference, for example, like the phytoncides that the trees emit? What would be the difference if I took a bottle of wood-based essential oils like fir or pine or cedar and just sprinkle that around my home or put that on my body, would I be getting the similar type of benefits that I would get from walking in the forest?
This is one thing that they are studying and doing experiments on to find out. It is possible that you can breathe in those essential oils in the home and you get a calming effect. You may even have your immune system boosted. I haven't read the studies, I only know that they are doing them. But it's not the same as being in the forest, right? Because the forest, you get so much more. You're also breathing in the negative ions. They also think that it's the negative ions from the water in the forest, the water droplets, the moisture in the forest. We breathe those in and they help create a calming effect. And the helpful bacteria that's in the air in the forest. So these also add to the strength of boosting your immune system, to decreasing stress hormones, to lowering blood pressure. And it's the whole picture. It's not just, it's like, we can look at a screen or a picture of a tree, and that has a certain amount of calming effect on some people, depending on your level of connection to nature.
Right.
But being immersed in the forest, you have the sounds washing over you, you have the smell, you have the breeze on your face and in your hair, you have a 360-degree view of millions of tiny details that just stimulate all your senses, and not just your 5 main senses, but they also stimulate your sense of creativity, curiosity, imagination, and intuition. So yeah, it's different actually being immersed in a real forest.
Exactly. You're getting a much more sensual experience. All the elements are working with you. And there's the colors and the shapes of all the different things that you're interacting with. And also with the animals. Like, I think you mentioned if you stood still in the forest for how long the animals start to come to you.
Right,
Like,
so there's just sort of a soft rule of thumb that if you are, especially deep in the forest, for 20 minutes, sitting still for 20 minutes, the animals start to feel your calmness. They sense your calmness and your safeness. And then they feel like they can show themselves and they just go about their business normally. They come out of hiding, and that is when you see more wildlife. I remember one time I was sitting just 100 yards from my house, but in the forest, and I was sitting in my sit spot, as I call it. And maybe it had been 20 minutes, I don't know, I'd been sitting there for a while, and suddenly I heard this noise that I'd never heard before. And it wasn't human-made noise. It was definitely an animal, but I couldn't figure out what animal because I'd never heard it. And this was in April, I believe April or May, it was springtime. And I looked behind me, and there were 2 squirrels chasing each other around a tree, probably playing the mating game.
Probably, yeah. Beautiful. Haida, we live on this gorgeous West Coast. A lot of us are familiar with the outdoors when we can get off our devices. What is the benefit of going out with a forest and nature guide rather than going out on one's own or with another companion? What are some of the things that a guide will offer me that I don't get if I go without a guide?
It's a very good question, and one that gets asked a lot. There are benefits to going out by yourself, but there are added benefits to having a guide as well at times. The guide gets complimented most for slowing people down. We live on such a fast-paced society. We're always on the go, 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 trying to get as much done as we can, never stopping. And the guide slows people down way more than they ever thought they would go, often stopping to really pay attention to the details, such as, if I just walked by this leaf, I might kind of generally know there's a leaf there. But if I stop and look at it, I'll see things. I might even see an insect on there that I wouldn't have seen if I had walked by even slowly. I only would see it if I stopped and really studied it for a moment. And it could be an insect I've never seen before. I often see insects I've never seen before, and I'm just in awe. So slowing people down, offering invitations, which are suggestions on how to interact with the forest, giving people permission to do things that they wouldn't otherwise give themselves permission to do, like, put a hand on a tree and just feel the connection. There's so many invitations. There's like hundreds of them.
I think the important thing is the slowing down. Often we even run through the woods, which has a benefit too in terms of exercise and cardio. But I think the benefit that the guide brings is just bring mindfulness to what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And there's a term that you used in this other than human world. Talk to us a little bit about that, more than human world.
Yeah, the more than human world. Often we talk about nature connection, and I'm going to go and enjoy some nature today. But if you really think about it, humans are part of nature. We have disconnected ourselves from nature so much, especially in the last 50 years. Especially, we've moved out of the forest, out of the natural surroundings. Anyways, but we are a part of nature. We evolved in nature for billions of years. And it's still very much a part of our unconscious mind, in our DNA. So really, instead of calling nature what we think of nature, we call it the more than human world, because we are part of nature.
I love that phrase.
We're not different.
No,
we're not separated.
Exactly, but we have, in our fast-paced, distracted and distracting lives, we have lost that connection. And people like you are trying to build that bridge again, which is really important. One of the things too that I like about this practice of forest bathing and nature therapy is that it helps you sleep better. It also, I was reading that Outward Bound with groups of young people, some of them suffer with ADHD. And this nature therapy has had tremendous benefits, and the research is still being done on ADHD and in some cases autism with connecting children with nature. And with this particular group with Outward Bound, they did some cognitive testing with them, testing their creative skills. And after 3 days in the outdoors, their scores were up by 50%. So just, reconnecting, refiring the brain, getting all their senses fired up, and just spending time doing something beautiful in the outdoors. So let's hear it from Mother Nature.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, Haida, you have some really interesting connections with a very well-known conservationist and humanitarian and animal lover. You have spent a fair bit of time in Africa, and you actually met Jane Goodall there, one of the icons of conservation in the world. Tell us a little bit how you met Jane Goodall and what that was like.
The first time I met her was by pure coincidence. Jane Goodall travels 300 days a year, and I had just read a book that told me this, so I didn't in one moment think that I would see her in Africa. But there I was, traveling in Africa for the first time, going down to Gombe Stream because I knew I had to see the chimpanzees, and walked into the customs hut between the Burundi and the Tanzania border, and there she was. And so I summed up the courage to ask her if we could catch a ride on her boat, and she said sorry. She turned me down. She was like, sorry, I don't have any room. But I got to watch the chimps of Gombe with her the next morning.
Beautiful.
So that was the highlight of my life, was her sitting 8 feet away from me up on the hills of Gombe, watching the chimps play in a tree.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that was pure by coincidence. And then I met her by coincidence on Salt Spring Island 4 years later. And this time we talked, and she invited me to write to her. And for years when she was young and had lots of time to write, and she was great at that. She loved writing to people who she felt she was inspiring, and we wrote a lot. But nowadays, I volunteer at all her West Coast lectures. So when she comes to Victoria or Vancouver, and she's coming to Vancouver on October 5th, so I'll see her again on October 5th.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
she's 84 years old, which is astounding that she still does that much traveling and is still that robust and healthy. It must be a testament to the healing power of the forest and nature. And she's a very calm individual, I would imagine, as well. She certainly
Yeah.
presents that way in a photograph.
Well, she says that she carries the peace of the forest within her. And anyone who's ever been in her presence can feel. I remember the first time I was in her presence, I could just feel the serene calmness of the forest. It just emanated from her. And I believe it's from spending 20 or more years, 26 years immersed in the forest, sitting, watching the chimps, watching everything else around her. It just had an incredible effect on her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it has had an incredible effect on you as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about forest bathing or nature therapy in all 4 seasons. That's something you recommend as well. Is it here in Canada?
Yeah, I do. Whether it's snowing, raining, sunny, windy, well, there's a bit of a safety factor when it comes to high winds. Light wind, it might be okay. Yeah, I recommend it in all seasons. The key is to dress for the weather so that you're comfortable.
Yeah.
When you're warm and dry, you can enjoy the ambiance immensely, and it has so much effect. I think of doing a presentation in October. We're talking about to beat the winter blues. Come out and learn how to beat the winter blues in the cold flu season. Because you get outdoors, they get outdoors, and it's not just sunshine that helps beat the winter blues, but it's the ambiance of the forest and nature that help beat the winter blues as well.
Absolutely.
It has de-stressing factors and boosts your immune system to keep away those germs.
Exactly. And this is for all ages, from babies to centenarians. We can all benefit at various stages of our lives.
Yeah.
And various life circumstances too. The healing power of nature, if you're going through some type of crises or passage in life, I think is nature is a very inviting place to come in to heal or to bridge some of those troubled waters. And I think you experienced that yourself in some of the challenges that you went through in your life.
Absolutely. When I first learned about forest bathing, my mind went to when I was 22 years old working in a children's camp kitchen. It was a small, hot kitchen, and it was just at that time of the month where I was just very stressed, and I just couldn't wait to get out of that kitchen. And as soon as I could, I ran across the field into the forest, and the moment I entered the forest, I could just feel all my stress and anxiety and frustrations wash away. And I just spent a good hour sitting, walking mindfully. So there I was doing forest bathing without knowing it, without the term yet.
Right.
And I'm sure lots of people have that experience.
Yeah. You might go out frustrated or angry or feeling hostile about some issue or something, and you re-emerge back into the world a little more centered, more calm, more grounded.
Absolutely. After an hour being immersed in that forest and sitting by that creek and having the water rush rush all my worries away, it just started to fill me with joy and awe and wonder and an inner love. They talk about how important it is for us to fill our own love bucket.
Self-love.
Self-love. Being in the forest helps me to fill my own love bucket.
Very important, because if you're not feeling that yourself, it's very hard to give that to others in this world. And it's like when you're flying with a child, you put on your own oxygen mask first. Otherwise, you're no really help to others. So you have to look after yourself first, and so you can bring your best game to this game of life. And let's talk a little bit about the Forest Therapy Association, and how you got to be involved in that, and your training that you went through.
Okay, so the Nature and Forest Therapy, Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs. They formed themselves about 4 years ago and started training guides. Amos Clifford is the founder of that organization, and they started with a few guides, and then now they're up to about close to 600 in 6 continents worldwide. I mean, this just took off. The media picked up on it. Everybody around the world just picked up on it.
I guess we don't have a therapist or a guide, pardon me, in Antarctica yet, or is that the...
That's right. It's the only continent we don't have a guide in, is Antarctica. I'm not sure if we're going to get any either.
And there is a guide training session coming up in Victoria in 2019. Tell us a little bit about that for anybody who wants to get involved.
So, we have 3 trained forest therapy guides in BC now, and 3 others that are doing their certification. It's a 6-month certification process. There is a guide training coming to Victoria at Mary Lake Nature Sanctuary somewhere around the end of April, beginning of May. The dates haven't been confirmed yet, but keep your eye on the natureandforesttherapy.org website, and that will tell you when the next training is. It's a 7-day intensive training. It's a wonderful experience, and then followed by 6-month mentored practicum. And I highly recommend it to anyone who feels a calling to connecting people with the more than human world.
Now, what about for somebody who lives on the prairies or the Arctic or in a desert region, and they don't have access to the forest like we're so lucky to do here? What are some of the benefits that they can get just if you don't have access to a forest?
Nature, or the more than human world, has benefits. They're different than what the trees give you, but there's still benefits. So connecting, even just sitting in a field of grasses, one starts to notice all the different grasses and how they all look different, and maybe some of them have a certain smell that's different than the other ones, or a different feel. Feeling nature, whether it's a fir branch or a soft grass, just stroking it has real calming effects.
It's very soothing.
Very soothing, very therapeutic.
I grew up on the prairies, and I often hear people say the prairies are so boring, there's nothing there. And as a prairie person, I mean, I just love the prairies. The grasses, as you say, the big sky, the rolling hills, it's just beautiful. There's a sense of freedom in there. Right. And it reminded me a little bit about East Africa, the same kind of rolling hills in the Savannah area. And speaking of Africa, we want to just talk about this wonderful little book you've written, Aida's Africa Adventure. Self-published. Congratulations, first-time author.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
good. And that chronicles a bit about your story in Africa, or?
Yeah, so it's inspired by a childhood memory coupled with my travel adventures when I backpacked through Africa as a 23-year-old. And it's all about, this young girl finding her way to Africa through hollow trees and the underground root system of the earth. So I call it a geographical fiction, because it teaches children a lot about the geography of the world, especially Africa. But there's also the underground system, the underground root system of the earth has a lot of imagination, fun imagination in it.
Beautiful. I love the illustrations on the cover, and also you did the illustrations that are inside the book too. So
yeah, and at
very
the
nicely
end of each chapter, there's a page that invites children to either write a little bit about the last chapter or draw a picture of the last chapter. So it's kind of interactive that way.
And your book's available on Amazon, widely distributed. for anybody who wants to get it. Let's talk briefly a little bit about this one as well, your guide to forest bathing, one of the founders of the forest bathing movement, and also Dr. King Lee, who did this beautiful book on forest bathing. Viewers want to check these books out at their local bookstores and learn a little bit more about the topic. These are beautiful works of
Would you like me to just
publishing.
comment quickly on
Sure,
each
yes,
one?
please.
So this one that you're holding, the Forest Bathing by Dr. King Lee. Dr. King Lee is the leading researcher in forest medicine in Japan. It's a beautiful, calming read. The book is laid out with lots of white space and photographs. It's a beautiful read. He touches a lot on the science and the inspiration of Japanese culture. I highly recommend that. I also highly recommend Your Guide to Forest Bathing by Amos Clifford. Amos Clifford is the founder of the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides, who trained me, who certified me. It's beautifully written. I love it. I find both books poetic and colorful language. This one is more of a guide to, Amos's book is more of a guide so that you can go through the forest yourself and do this practice yourself in between using a guide.
Very good. Now, you have an upcoming guided nature walk forest bathing session in Coombs. Tell us a little bit about that, Haida.
Yeah, so at the Organic Blueberry Farm in Coombs, a Good Nature farm, I'll be doing a guided forest therapy walk on October 6th. That's the Saturday of the Thanksgiving weekend. It'll be in the afternoon. They have such a beautiful untouched forest there. I highly recommend coming to experience the ambiance that is created there. And
sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
And information is available on your website. We've got those up on the screen for you, and we can people can also contact you by phone. We have your phone number up there as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it'll be on the website by this weekend.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Haida, any closing thoughts here? We just have to wrap up. We've got about 30 seconds or so.
I invite people to do what many participants have said, to just give it a try. Try out a guided walk as well as doing it on your own. Mm-hmm. They're both very wonderful, authentic connections with yourself, the more than human world, and other people.
Very beautiful. Thank you, Haida. Appreciate you coming in today to talk to us about forest bathing and nature therapy. Very nice to have you here.
And thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us here on Coast Connections. Now get outside and connect with nature and do some forest bathing with yourself, your family, your friends, or contact a forest bathing guide. Thank you. We'll see you next time.